The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again, the years keep rolling by.
Top of the morning, afternoon, or evening. I'm Joe Doolittle.
And I'm Kate Dudding.
And this is Story by Story.
Celebrating the human spirit.
And we are storytellers.
Yes, that's how we celebrate. One of the ways we celebrate the human spirit.
Yes, we do. And it's something we practice with the spoken word. Sometimes we sing.
Sometimes we dance.
Sometimes we dance. Sometimes we play instruments, but not very well. No, but maybe.
Well, no.
I am learning the ukulele. I just want you to know that it's going to be my one concert level thing. Yeah. Well, maybe it won't be, but that's another story, as they say. Well, we're going to spend an hour with you with a guest storyteller and some conversations about what is storytelling all about, really. And it's really about one of the oldest forms of communication, maybe the oldest form of communication we have as people.
Well, yeah, after, just conversations, the music people, they go, oh, no, we were playing flutes or whistling and singing. The first artistic expressions.
Right, we don't have any real data on any of this.
Yeah. But I gotta believe, before they were drawing on the caves in France, the battles with the mastodons, they were telling that story around the fire.
That's right.
I just have to believe that.
And one of the things that there is some evidence on is that if you're listening and hear a story, you tend to remember that in a way that you don't in a casual conversation.
Or a lecture.
That's true. So if you're out there and you're doing lectures, include a story.
Yes, at least to start it off. And this has been quantitatively proven that in one of the programs where you can get a master's degree in storytelling at Eastern Tennessee State University, a friend of mine got her thesis was on proving this. And what they did was they gave children an attitude survey on the stars. That whole topic of
Constellations.
Constellations, yes. And then some of them, in their unit on constellations, each constellation started off with a story, an old Native American story or a Greek story on it, and then went into the scientific stuff. Then at the end of the unit, everyone was given that same attitude survey again. And the kids who had gotten the stories first and then the scientific information, they were much more interested in constellations than the poor kids who were story deprived.
Well,
and statistically, significantly different between the attitudes of those two groups. So that's one of many studies that have shown that if you want to get people's attention, start with a story. That's why there was an article just in Forbes magazine on the CEO of Starbucks who just stood down.
Yeah.
Whose name I can't remember. But I remember his story. That Starbucks had started up. He went on a business trip to Milan and loved the way they had a coffee shop there. It was a community. That it was more than just, here's your cup of coffee, Joe. Well, or whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. And so he came back and he told his partners about this, and they said, no, we don't want to do that. So he left them, went off, had a pilot store that he started up following the Milan idea. And 2 years later, he bought his partners out of Starbucks and took it over.
There you go.
And he was telling that story over and over again throughout his whole career, that he had some wonderful words of the atmosphere in that coffee shop in Milan that he wanted to recreate here.
Well, you know, the thing about stories is that sometimes they just happen to you. And as you were talking about the stars, I just had breakfast with Ken Bushman, who I tell stories with, and he runs Camp Fowler, our Reformed Church camp up in the Adirondacks. And they do they have a soccer field. They don't call it, it's the recreation field. They don't talk about it as a soccer field anymore because the kids who don't play soccer don't do it. And after, like, the bonfires died down, Kent will take these kids up, if it's a clear night, and they lay on the ground, and he tells the old Greek myths. And counselors, they have a program called Camp Aaron, which is for kids who have lost a parent or significant other in the weekend. And George Giokis is a friend of mine, and he's the physician in charge of palliative care at Ellis Hospital. And he was on his back listening to Ken tell those stories. And he talks about it almost every time I see him. And it's the kind of thing that is an experience like the community of the coffee shop in Milan. And when you're there, you love it and you remember it. And one of the things about stories is someone once said, we don't remember days, we remember moments. We remember the moment that we were laying on our back, hearing the story of the Pleiades.
And hearing Kent.
Well, yeah, that's
I mean, Kent is a fabulous, fabulous human being as well as a storyteller.
So stories have a lot of applications, and often we think that they just kind of occur, but storytellers have to prepare them, and they have to kind of think themselves into the story. And I just want to make another little plug. If you're interested in learning more about storytelling, you can go to our website, www.storyscircle@proctors.org. There's a lot of information, and you can think about coming out and sitting in on one of our Story Circle meetings where we kind of practice storytelling and talk a little bit about it. And I really encourage you to get your feet wet in storytelling. We'd love to see you. And it's right here at the Colonie Library.
Half the time.
Half the time. And half the time is at the Pine Hills Library in Albany. And all those dates are on our website. Anyway.
Yeah, you go to storycircle@proctors.org and click on Story Circle, or you can go to story-circle.org and get directly to our Guild section of the Guild website. They're kind of interrelated, but...
And, you know, we've talked a lot about stories, but one of the ways you can learn more about storytelling is to ask a storyteller how they happen to become a storyteller.
And you know, we have a new to us in this studio storyteller.
We do.
Yes.
So you mean we could ask that person, and then maybe we could hear her story?
Linda McKenney. She has many different talents. I met her as a teacher, a study leader of an Academy for Lifelong Learning course on theater games. So, Linda, welcome.
Thank you.
That's one of your hats.
Yes, I do wear multiple hats. I call myself a multi-potentialite because I have so many different interests.
Boy, there's a new handle. What are you? I'm a multi-potentialite.
You have a high potentialite.
I think that's. I have a grand dog who's a Maltese poodle mix, and we call him a multi-poo, but I've never heard of multi-potential.
There you go. Similar.
Multi-po.
Multi-po. Are you're local, but where do you just introduce yourself a little bit, maybe?
Well, I'm Linda McKenney, and I live in the Saratoga Springs area. And I'm pretty new to storytelling. I actually got started because I took a class with Margaret French and Betty Cassidy at the Crandall Library in Glens Falls. I live close to Glens Falls. And it's interesting because my family, I kind of grew up on stories. My parents would elaborate all the things in their lives and sort of turn it into a story. And so it wasn't like a new concept to me, but the formal process of telling stories was a new concept. I believe that, we live our life in stories. We are our stories. We create stories about ourselves. We become those stories. We can change those stories if we want to change those stories. So, yeah, they're pretty critical. And it was interesting listening to the two of you because my mother just moved to New York. She's 97. She moved into assisted living. We brought her up here from Florida. And my daughter and her 2 sons went to visit her the other day. And my daughter got my mother talking about traveling to Mexico years ago. And so my 2 grandsons sat on the couch and listened. And about 10 minutes into her talking, she said to them, "Don't you have those gadgets with you that kids always are looking at?" And they took out their phones and they said, "Yeah, we have them, but we don't want them." And they put them back. And they continued to listen to my mother tell her stories about traveling in Mexico. So, yeah, stories are pretty important, I think, in families to hand down traditions and to understand people better. So it's a wonderful thing to be part of.
Yes. But you also, let's see, so we have, so the theater games comes from your background?
Yes, I have a degree in theater and theater therapy. I'm a late bloomer. I got my college degree when I was 55.
Wow.
Better late than never.
Better late than never. And it took me a while to sort of figure out what I wanted to do in life. I was a stay-at-home mom for many years, raised my family and such. And so then that sort of navigated my way through theater things. And then I guess I sort of got into storytelling in Toastmasters. I joined Toastmasters to improve public speaking skills. And in a way, when you give a speech, you tell a story, however you're timed. And if you go over, I was disqualified at a contest for going over by 1 second. Yes.
Oh.
So what I like about the more relaxed form of storytelling is while you do have sort of a time constraint, you're not going to get penalized for going over by 1 second. And that sort of morphed into being a motivational speaker. And I do start talks with a story or integrate stories into any kind of speech or talk that I'm giving or workshop that I'm giving, because I think people do remember better when they hear stories and they connect to content through a story. And so most of the stories that I tell personally are goof-ups I've had in my own life. I like to make people laugh, so I try to integrate laughter into them.
I think of those as epiphany stories.
Yes. Yes, they are. They are
goof-ups that you've learned from. Epiphany.
Yes,
if
definitely learned from.
It's nice to mine a group of stories that you have a real good supply of. The goof-ups tend to continue to happen in life.
And people, everybody, well, maybe not you, but most people have goofed up more than once in their life. So they can relate.
Plenty.
They can relate to that. Oh, that reminds me of when I avoided an accident, but I blew out a tire. It wasn't even 24 hours old when I hit the curb so hard, avoiding the car in front of me that had stopped dead. Anyways, I digress.
And I think when you become a storyteller, you recognize stories more often. You look at situations and say, "Oh, this could be a story."
This could be a story.
That sort of thing.
If it doesn't kill me.
Yes, it could be a story.
And I sometimes find myself thinking, well, I have a story about that. But sometimes if you tell the story then, it shuts the other person off from wherever they are, and so I've had to sit on my hands intentionally. And what you learn is that then there's chapter 2 that comes from that other person.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's a good point. Absolutely.
Chapter 2.
But I've also seen you wearing a wig and a long black dress. What's that all about?
Wait a minute. A wig and a long black dress?
Yes.
Yes.
So you kind of moonlight as a ghost, or what are we talking about here?
Sort of in a way.
Sort of in a way.
Bring someone back from the dead.
Oh.
And I am a historical reenactor. I portray Susan B. Anthony. And I do that in schools and in adult groups. I just actually was invited to go to the Army War College at the museum there and do Susan B. Anthony for Women's Equality Day in August.
Fun.
So that That was great fun. Yes, it
Ooh.
was. Yeah.
So you had a lot of Army officers sitting there?
I had a lot of people in camouflage.
Yeah.
They didn't blend in with the audience, though, because there were various colors.
Yeah, they were.
But yes, yeah.
So this is in Saratoga, the military museum?
No, it was in Carlisle, Pennsylvania.
Carlisle.
Oh,
Yes,
Oh,
it was the big
yeah.
time for me. I got to
Ooh.
travel on Army papers. I had, yes,
Yes, ma'am.
yes. So that was a lot of fun, and there will be that talk will actually be on their blog at some point in time because they recorded it. They didn't videotape it; they recorded it, and then they put it on their blog. So they said they have quite thousands of people that listen to their blog.
Well,
so.
you need to send me that link because
Okay.
there's on story-circle.org, one of the pages there is storytellers, and these are storytellers that are available to make presentations. And Linda has a page there.
Yes.
You know, it says storytellers, and then there's all of our names, and you click on Linda McKenney, and you'll get to a little page about her, and that has a video window of a story that you told at Proctor's and at Salem for word plays in September. Actually, she hasn't done that yet because it hasn't.
Yes.
We're taping before that happens, but nonetheless,
It will be there.
it will have been done
Yeah.
by the time this is broadcast. So I don't know where I was going with that. Nonetheless.
You're going to get the link so you can add it to that.
Right,
so
Yeah.
right. So
there you
the
go.
video window is on that page, but the audio of you doing
Okay.
Susan B. Anthony can also be added there.
Great.
To
Wonderful.
highlight.
Thank you.
Highlight you as a storyteller.
And there's I suppose it's a pretty simple step from being trained in theater and an actor to doing story in the first person. But that is a particular medium in its own right, that when you actually become somebody. Because there's usually somebody who knows somebody about or something about your character. You know,
Exactly. If you're in a play, one of the stories I plan on telling today was about when I was in a play. But when you're in a play, you're portraying a character, so you're not yourself. But when you're telling a story, at least most of the stories that I tell, they're stories about me or about people in my life, and so I'm not portraying somebody else. Unless I'm Susan B. Anthony, I'm
Right.
not portraying someone else. I'm portraying myself.
But you relate conversations you
Yes.
had with other people, so in that sense, you're also, you may change your speech pattern.
Oh,
or whatever.
absolutely. Yes, I think it helps as a storyteller to have some theater training. I think it does help. Just to even have you be a little more relaxed in front of an audience.
Yes.
Though I think, I still get nervous when I'm in front of an audience, but you try to use that nervous energy
That's right.
to your own benefit.
Yes. I just heard something about that. I think that it was that it shows that you care, how much you care, that nervousness that you
Oh,
want
yeah, that's
to,
a good point, right, because you want to do a good job.
Right.
Yeah.
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 So it's
if you don't feel those flutters, then you're not on your game.
That's a good point.
I think
Yeah.
it's a very important part of the whole element. Maybe what would be good is if you share a story with us.
Okay.
And then we'll kind of talk about the story
Okay.
and observations, and that'll be fun to listen to you tell a story.
All right.
yes. Please tell us a story.
Okay, I will.
And I'm not going to pull out my iPad or anything like that. I'm going to listen to you.
Oh, well, thank you
Yeah,
very much. I appreciate that.
And even though I have a timer going so that we don't exceed our hour limit I am not going to, you said it was 7.5
Get the hook and
minutes
yank me.
and 3 seconds over. No, we won't do that either.
Okay. Well, this story I call Gorilla Glue, and this is a story about when I was in a play. I was in Arsenic and Old Lace, and I was playing the part of Aunt Martha. And if you're ever involved in a smaller production of community theater, you'll find that the actors don't just act. We might make our own costumes, we bring in furniture from our homes for set decoration, and that was the case for this play. So at dress rehearsal, a chair that I had brought in from my home was damaged a bit during kind of a raucous scene. So the next day, opening night, I brought in some Gorilla Glue to fix the chair. Now, I'd never used Gorilla Glue before, but it said on the bottle that it would fix just about anything, so I trusted that. A couple hours before opening, I went onto the stage and I squirted the glue into the hole in the chair and I shoved the support into it, and of course glue ran down the side of the leg. And I wiped it away with my hand. Chair fixed, I rubbed my hands together, spreading glue all over both my hands. Those of you who are gasping, you've used Gorilla Glue before, and you know that that was a drastic mistake on my part, but I thought it worked just like Elmer's glue, and I would just wash it off or peel it off, no big deal. So I went into the bathroom, and hot water and soap, and I washed my hands, and it felt like the glue was off, and I took a paper towel to dry them, and sure enough, I had little bits of paper towel stuck all over both of my hands. So I washed them again with as hot of water as I could stand, washed them. Took the paper towel, no, still had little pieces of paper towel stuck all over my hands. Our production was in a high school, so I decided to seek out the janitor. When I found him, he gave me a bottle of very strong cleaning solution. He sprayed it on my hands for me, and I rubbed them together, and the paper towel went away, but once my hand dried, they were just as sticky as before. Next, we tried paint thinner.
Ooh.
He rubbed paint thinner on both of my hands. Rubbed them together, they felt nice and smooth. Once they dried, they were sticky again. So no matter what liquid you put on my hands, once it dried, they were sticky again. I was starting to panic. I was going to go on stage in a little over an hour. I had numerous props to handle, and I wouldn't be able to put any of them down. Then I had the epiphany that I could call the 800 number on the Gorilla Glue bottle. Of course, I couldn't pick up the phone because you know what would have happened. So my friend dialed the number for me and put the phone on speaker. And we waited with bated breath. I didn't expect to speak to anyone because it was Saturday. But as we listened to the options on their menu, and when it came to option 5, and it said, if you have Gorilla Glue on your skin and cannot remove it, press option 5, I was very excited. I thought, this is it. This is the answer that I need. I will be able to go on stage and not carry around a wine bottle, a tray, utensils, dishes, my hand, my purse, and a bottle of poison. We listened with bated breath. And the automated voice went on to say, if you have Gorilla Glue on your hands, do not try to remove it with harsh solvents. That will only irritate your skin. The glue will wear off in time. It will usually take about a week. A week? Fortunately, the voice went on to say that hand lotion applied liberally will help to dissipate some of the stickiness. Gobs of hand lotion later, I went on stage. The stickiness was gone, but I had a new problem, not to let the wine bottle slip out of my hands. Arsenic and Old Lace, Aunt Martha, a role that will always stick with me.
Bravissimo.
Thank you.
Bravissimo.
Oh, as if that play didn't need a little more wackiness added to it.
Amazing. The thing about the Gorilla Glue is it foams. So that you put a little bit down there, and all of a sudden it's a lot.
Exactly.
And it's growing.
Exactly.
So it's like you discovered the super mushroom, and it's right
That's
there.
exactly right. This I know now.
Yeah.
The Gorilla Glue that ate Chicago.
It's quite the stuff, I'll tell you.
It does fix that chair.
That chair.
And it did wear off. It took about a week, but it did wear off. I used up a lot of hand lotion that week.
Yes. I was wondering, as you were going through the solvents, I'm going, Does she still have any fingerprints?
Yeah, that'd be good.
They look normal from this distance.
If you don't have any fingerprints, how do you open your iPhone? Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah. I didn't dare touch my phone.
So the viewers there, think about the story in terms of how it worked, because you kind of softly let us in there. You know, I mean, it didn't kind of meandered your way to the broken chair and the Gorilla Glue. And you even set up the Gorilla Glue as a thing with the way you wiped your hands, and you were quite nonchalant about that. And then the crisis comes in the bathroom. And I mean, we've all kind of been there with something, you know. So you don't announce the crises. You kind of settle into it, and it happens to all of us. It's the moment of not being able to wash
Oh
them.
no! Why did I do? No!
Yeah, exactly.
And then your savior isn't your savior. The janitor isn't your janitor. You know, he was not.
And number 5 wasn't either.
Number
I
five
had
wasn't-
great hopes there. I really did like
As
you.
did I.
Yes.
And by the time you got to the hand lotion, I just didn't know what was going to happen. You know? and that's kind of the way a good story can continue to meet the expectations of the listener for both entertainment and wonder. You know, because you kind of wonder what's going to happen, and then you're in wonder that you actually pulled all this stuff off without dropping the bottle. That's great.
Have you ever used Gorilla Glue again?
I have very cautiously.
Very cautiously.
Very cautiously. I know how it explodes and
Right.
bubbles up, so I use a little tiny bit, and I don't touch it.
Yeah, don't touch it.
No.
Yes.
I'd be wearing gloves, actually. But
That's a good point.
Yes. So it gets on the gloves. Okay. So it wears off the gloves. Okay. And you don't pick up anything with the glove while the glove's wet. It's an improvement, but it's still.
I think the other thing about story that we learned from you in that story is that a good story shares a part of the storyteller. In other words, you shared a lot about who you were. One, you're an actor. Two, you could pull off Aunt Martha. And that you were a supportive person because you shared your furniture with the play. I mean, you know, so you have a whole bunch of information that normally isn't shared in a conversation right away.
And you have perseverance. You kept on. You tried to solve the problem yourself. Janitor, that's brilliant. I'm not sure I would have gone there. And because that didn't help.
Now, don't get too analytical about stories. But what I was trying to do is just kind of draw out the diagram of the story a little bit, because when you're developing a story and when you're kind of evaluating how you're going to tell it or how you're going to change it, it's helpful to have a little diagram, and that's maybe one of the more formal things that a storyteller will do. But most of the time, we just kind of go with the flow and see where it's going to take us. And sometimes our hands stick together.
I thought you were a flow person.
Well, I am a flow person, but sometimes you kind of have to ask yourself, how am I going to make this work for this group of people?
Oh, okay, that's very key.
And usually with me, when I get more disciplined is when I get terrified, and that happens when I tell to kids. Because I think kids are the hardest audience, because if you blow it, they tell you right away.
Oh, they do. They do. They hold nothing back.
And then,
yes.
and if you've got their parents in the room, and then, so I'm much more disciplined with my prep with kids than I am with adults.
Yes.
You know, I just look at you and say, well, here we are having a beer together. I'll tell you a story.
Yeah.
You know, just,
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Yeah, I think of you as a kitchen table raconteur.
Well, yeah, that's
sort of.
not with kids.
Not with kids, but beginning, middle, and end.
That's right,
That's good that you can identify those sections. Crisis. Really, I think all stories need a crisis and a resolution. Yeah. Elizabeth Ellis, a wonderful storyteller from Dallas, says, it's not fair if you leave your listeners in the middle of your crisis. When people come to listen to stories, it's like you're a tour guide, and it's implicit that you will bring them back alive. And leaving them in the pit of your despair means you're not ready to tell that story. It does not have a resolution.
Yeah.
And you need to, and sobbing on stage is also, you were supposed to be taking care of them. They are not supposed to be taking care of you.
Okay.
So it's beginning, middle, end, crisis resolution. It's not as simple as all that, but it's wonderful fun. It's wonderful. Even if you are feeling sick, if you have to tell a story, all the symptoms go away while you are telling the story. That happened to me at a weekend workshop, and I had abdominal pain. I had taken too much Lactaid. I hadn't drunk enough milk to offset that, and so that's what was. But I didn't know what was going on. I just knew. Oh, I don't know if I can tell. It's your turn. Okay.
There I am.
The show must go on.
And I went through it, and then I said, I have to go to the bathroom. Thank you very much. So
That may have been too much information.
okay, sorry. We are real people. We do go to the bathroom
Right.
more than just to wash our hands, trying to get rid of Gorilla Glue.
Now, Kate, I know that there's a lot of good performances going on this month in the storytelling world, and we're going to take you through those because we want to encourage you to come out and not only come to a Story Circle meeting and practice with us, but maybe come and listen and be entertained.
Yes, indeed. We have a wonderful lineup this October. On first Tuesday, Tales and Stuff at Arthur's Market in the Stockade section of Schenectady, a series that Joe organizes. On October 2nd, there'll be a program, the featured teller will tell some stories on stories of spooks in the valley.
Halloween's coming. That's what that's all about.
This is an open mic not only for storytelling, but for music and spoken word. So if you have, if you know The Raven, Nevermore.
Or we'll even let you read The Raven.
Yes.
Come and join us.
Yes. Then the Interfaith Story Circle is having their monthly meeting on October 11th, Listening for the Feminine Divine. And the featured teller there is Barbara Chapitis. And this will be at the Regional Synod of Albany, which is the local area
office of the denomination,
of the Reformed Church of America.
And it's on Grand Boulevard in Schenectady, just a couple blocks up from where Linton High School is.
Yes. Synod, it's not a snud. No, sorry. It's just a word I'm really not familiar with. Then, on the Friday, October 11th, Shawnee Evenings, a series at the Irish American Heritage Museum in Albany, again a series that Joe organizes, will have stories of whispers and things that go bump in the dark. With, again, Barbara Chapitis and Lolly Davidson, who were part of the 2/3 of the Snickering Witches.
That's right, the Snickering Witches.
Okay. That should be fun. Then that Sunday at Proctor's, we have a series called Word Plays, and the topic on Sunday, October 14th is Irresistible. And when I made the flyer, I thought, I just sort of free associate, and I went immediately to chocolate. So the background of is chocolate being poured into this huge vat. Well, you can't tell if it's a puddle or what, but it probably is a vat. And we are now in, I don't know if I've told you this, but we are no longer above the box office at Proctor's in the Fenimore Gallery. We are below the box office in the Hearst Education Center. You could think of it the bargain basement when it used to be Carl Company. But our tellers then will be, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'll try my best. Atharv Agashe, who's one of the Children of the Well members. His older brother, Aditya Agashe, has performed with us. Siri Allison, Claire Beadlestone, Betty Cassidy, one of your teachers, Marnie Gillard, Christy Keegan, Nancy Marie Payne, and Sandy Schumann. They are always wonderful.
Yes.
We just give the tellers the topic, and they send in, that they have, this is the title, it's this kind of story, it's this long, and I pick to see that we have a varied program, that they're not all personal stories, they're not all stories from India, they have different lengths of time, and it's fabulous how these stories relate or bump heads or
Come together.
It's a mosaic or a collage of storytelling. Then we will have our monthly meeting of Story Circle. It's where people can come to share works in progress or just listen to stories, and you can get as little or as much feedback as you want. You can say, I just need to tell it to human faces. My dog really doesn't give me a lot of feedback. Or, this is what I've come up with, and I have problems, and I'd welcome any suggestion. Or you could just focus in on, your own questions. Could you tell the difference between who was talking when the mother and the daughter were talking? So, whatever you need, we will do our very best to supply. And in a very kindly fashion. We understand that new stories are like a newborn, and you really don't need to. Yeah, newborns do get little rashes. We won't mention. We'll help, and it will be at the Pine Hills branch, and we'll have some sort of between 6:15 and 7, some sort of round table on a topic on storytelling. Sort of an educational aspect, and then 7 to 9 is the storytelling of the works in progress. Then, storytelling open mic at Cafelina. We'll have Claire Nolan as the featured teller on October 23rd. Now, every month except Christmas, and every month between September and June except for December, on the 4th Tuesday of the month, there's going to be the storytelling open mic at Cafelina, 7 to 9. And that's another place. There, you cannot read. They don't want you to use notes. You come prepared to tell, and it's a fabulous time. And if you haven't been to the renovated Cafelina, it is incredible.
It's lovely space.
It
Just
still
great space.
has the brick wall. It feels it's had a facelift. You can still recognize somebody if they've had a facelift.
And an elevator.
And an elevator and a nose job. No. Yes, and an elevator. If the stairs that work, that is the emergency exit, and they've been redone. So if you need to get out of there, it's a useful set of stairs now. And then just wanted to remind you of our whole season at Proctor's. We have 5-word plays. Mavericks, Irresistible, Starting Over, Inside Out, and Shenanigans. And then we have Telebration, which is very similar to word plays in that there's a topic and there are all different kinds of stories that relate to it. This year it's called Sparks. Sparks. And that will be in the GE Theater at 3:30 to 5:30 on Sunday, November 18th. And if you can't come, or you're dying for stories that what's on TV just doesn't work out, go to our website, storycircle@proctors.org, and click on YouTube. And over 200 stories are waiting for you on your demand to be put on your computer screen. Many of them recorded in this very same studio.
That's right.
So thank you, Colonie Town Library. Thank you, Greg Rzinski. who is the station manager, engineer, reproducing person, scheduler, the whole bit. I'm sure I've missed several hats he wears.
That's probably true.
Yes.
But we have a bit of storytelling going on, and we encourage you to take advantage of any of those programs and a meeting. And I'd like to talk a little bit, if we could, with Linda about, I can see why Susan B. Anthony would be attractive to a woman to talk about, to play. How did you find each other?
It's interesting. I took a creative writing class, and actually that I use a lot of the pieces, the essays that I wrote in creative nonfiction, and I converted them into stories. So they're written first, and then they become stories. But the person who facilitated the class, Pat Nugent, there was a grant with the League of Women Voters of Saratoga County, and they were looking for 3 historical reenactors, one of them being Susan B. Anthony, and she invited me, and I said yes. And so I didn't know a lot about Susan B. Anthony. I knew that there was that dollar floating around that looked like a quarter, and I knew she was involved in suffrage, but I had no idea about the trials and tribulations that she went through.
And her drive.
She was such a dedicated woman. I admire her so much. But as I had to study her, and then I had to, of course, write the script. I talked for about a half an hour. And then I had to find the clothing, which turned out I couldn't find any clothing that I wanted or that I could afford, let's put it that way. And so I wound up making the dress myself. So that was quite the endeavor. But we've now become one in a way. People tell me that I channel her when I talk about her. And I think it's because I admire her so much, that I'm so grateful and happy to be telling her story that it just, I guess, sort of comes out when I'm doing it.
And you have the guts that after, because I've seen a performance of Linda's as Susan B. Anthony. You have the guts to take questions from the audience as Susan B. Anthony.
Oh, I stay in character.
Yes.
People try to trip me up, but I stay in character. And that can be challenging. I have gotten questions I couldn't answer, and I try to skirt around them or say, gee, it's been so long. I just don't remember that person. Yes. But yeah, that I enjoy that part of it. That is a challenge. But I think it's important to do things that scare us a little bit because it makes us a little braver overall when we do that. So I'm not adverse to that. I'm not going bungee jumping, but I'll take questions as Susan B. Anthony.
I'll take questions.
That's sticking your neck out.
Yes, a tad.
Well, that's kind of the motivation to take the writing class and then learn how to kind of collect the stories and then be asked to or commissioned to collect a personage and then put it together and then find that you're so with it that you actually channel her.
I know. It's interesting how life, you go down one path and you really don't often know where that path is going to lead you. And I had no idea that taking that creative nonfiction class, what it was going to do for me.
With Academy of Lifelong Learning.
Yes, that was with the Academy of Lifelong Learning as well. So, and the women that took that class, we still meet once a month. We critique each other's work.
Cool.
We're very supportive. We call ourselves sister writers, and we help each other with our writing. Yeah, so it's really been a blessing overall.
I took that class also at a different time. I don't think
No, we weren't in the same.
Right.
No.
And it was fine. But we didn't bond, and we didn't meet. Though, anyways, that's about me, not about you. We have about 15 minutes left.
Okay.
And I know you have another story up your sleeve.
I do.
So let's make sure that gets in, and
okay.
then we can talk about storytelling for another 3 hours easily.
Oh, sure.
But let's get your story in first.
Okay. Well, I call this story the African Violet Caper. And it is actually a story about one of the most terrifying things that I ever did in my life. And at that time, I was working at a bank as the payroll clerk, and my office was adjacent to that of the internal auditor. And I will call him John because that was his name. And John was a bit of a whiner, and he liked to come into my office every day and whine and complain. And I could tolerate it up to a point because I do have a high pain tolerance. But it was his remarks about women that really got to me. He would say things like, women should be barefoot and pregnant, and women were put on this earth to serve man. I suspected that at home his wife ruled the roost, and so he liked to puff himself up at work. And I would sometimes come back with a snarky comment, but that would just egg him on, so eventually I just quit, and I would listen. On Employee Appreciation Day, every person in the bank was given an African violet. Now, John doted on his African violet. And every day when he came into my office, he would tell me how well he was taking care of it with appropriate watering and fertilizer. And as he went on and on and on about his excellent green thumb, this idea formulated in my head. And I decided to kidnap his African violet and hold it hostage, which found me standing on top of the tallest metal file cabinet in my office at 6:30 a.m. one morning. My heart was pounding like a jackhammer, and my jello-like legs were jittering and jiggling. So I just paused for a moment to gather my breath, and I looked out over this elite floor of the bank and noticed how quiet it was. Without all of the executives, the ego cloud had dissipated. And then I noticed that it sort of looked like a maze. And I imagined all of the executives, the vice president of human resources, and the vice president of finance, and the vice president of accounting, all of those executives as superior rats, directing all of us worker rats in our daily activities. The secretary and I were the only worker rats on the floor. And then I composed myself, realizing, I better get to it because I only had just so much time to do this. And if I got caught, I would be fired. So I stepped over on top of the tall metal cabinet in John's office, and I almost slid right off. I chastised myself for wearing pantyhose. But it was too late to do anything about it because anyone who wears control top pantyhose knows that it takes an inordinate amount of time to take them off and put them back on. So I just vowed to be careful. I had been in John's office before, so I knew that his furniture was situated in a way that I could clamber my way down, which I did. And when I arrived on his office floor, I scooped up his plant and I put it on top of the file cabinet, and I climbed my way back up, and then I put it over on top of my cabinet and climbed over very carefully and cautiously made my way down till I was in the solid carpeted floor of my office. And I breathed a sigh of relief. Once my pulse settled down, I looked around trying to figure out where I was going to put that African violet. I threw caution to the wind and put it on the windowsill next to mine. Now the ransom note. I had prepared for this by occasionally getting a brand new interoffice envelope from the mailroom because I could use one from my office, even if I tried to black out my name. You never know. John was good at discovery. And as for the ransom note, I prepared a true kidnapper's ransom note. At home, I cut out little words out of magazines and glued them all over a piece of paper. I made sure I did this at home because otherwise I would be misappropriating company supplies. So the first ransom note said, "I have your African violet. If you want to get it back alive, do as I say. More to follow." So I put the ransom note in the envelope, and I wrote John's name with my left hand to describe my signature. And John would be in soon, so I locked my office door, I went next door for coffee, but I shoved the envelope, I buried it in the secretary's inbox. When I came back at 8:30, the floor was in bedlam. John was scurrying about trying to sniff out his plant and who had sent the note. As soon as he saw me get off the elevator, he ran over and told me what had happened, and I feigned surprise. He followed me to my office, babbling, whining. I tried not to make eye contact. I took off my coat, I hung it up, I sat with my back to him. I was afraid I would burst out laughing. So I shuffled through papers, and eventually he got tired of complaining and he left. I closed my office door and I put my head down on my desk, and I enjoyed a delicious silent laugh. The next day I sent the next ransom note, prepared very much the same way as the first one. And this one said, "I have your precious African violet. If you wish to get it back, you must wear a pink shirt to work." Now, in those days, men didn't wear pink shirts. "You will begin each day in the common area with a 10-minute speech as to the superiority of women. Every day without compliance," and I thought the word compliance was good for an internal auditor, "would result in a severed appendage of your plant." So I put the note in the envelope, and I put one of the leaves from his plant in there with it. I waited till everyone left that day, and then I buried the envelope in the in basket for the secretary, or the out basket. Oh, of course, the next morning when I came in, John came right into my office. He was incensed. He would not comply with these demands. This is ridiculous. As he went on and on and on about how ridiculous this whole situation was, he had a clear sight line to his plant sitting on my windowsill, and he was so busy with pontification, he never noticed it. Of course, I played like I was very sympathetic to John. I think I got the Academy Award for that role. And eventually he left. And after a couple of days of him not complying and me mutilating the plant, I just stopped because the fun was over. I never got the result that I wanted, but when I resigned from the bank, I left with 2 African violets.
You never gave him the plant back?
No.
But he didn't even recognize it. He wasn't a good plant owner, not recognizing his own plant.
Absolutely.
Because I was wondering about that, because it was in plain sight.
Plain sight. So if you want to hide something, hide it in plain sight.
Oh, purloined letter, Edgar
Yeah.
Allan Poe, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't know. I cannot remember John's last name. But if he stumbles across this video, he's going to find out.
Finally.
Well,
Yes.
now, I need to ask you this question. Is this before or after you discovered Susan B. Anthony?
Oh, way before. This was years and years and years ago.
So Susan had been looking at you for some time before you were selected for the role.
Yeah, perhaps.
I see.
Perhaps.
I see.
Yeah, that was my
the
actually
spirit.
very first job, serious job after getting a divorce and like being a homemaker, and I'm back in the business world. And I was sort of trying on my brave shoes, I guess, which is why I said it was one of the scariest things I ever did, because back then I was a lot more timid. and more of an introvert than I am now. So, yeah, that was like a big
But
deal
those
for me.
ransom notes were pretty fierce.
Well, I can tell you, I cracked myself up over them when I was doing them at home. I just thought this was so much fun.
Okay.
I
I knew you were a very nice person and very creative, but I also know I always treat her right.
right. I was going to say, keep on the right side of this woman, or she's going to eat your plant. I'll tell you.
And I do have African violets.
Oh, you do?
My grandmother had African violets, and I have always had African violets.
And now you talked about writing the stories as part of a creative writing class. Mm-hmm. Was that a story that was written first and then told?
Yes.
Or did you tell it first?
It was written first.
Oh.
And so I think what happens when you write a story, like you were saying, you wind up with sort of an arc in your story. You wind up with choosing words differently, descriptive words. When I write creative writing, I try to paint pictures. I try to have people be able to visualize what's going on. So then when I'm telling the story, I try to do the same thing as best I can to bring you into that place and imagine being there with the metal file cabinets and me standing on top and
Seeing the maze,
and
like
seeing the maze and that sort of thing. So that is like one of my goals when I tell a story, is to try to help you visualize and be there with me as best I can. You know, there's that whole Joseph Campbell, the hero story, that if you look at most movies and really well done stories, you have that whole, you know, the hero goes on a journey, is somehow transformed and comes back a different, you know, different person with usually a message of some sort. So sometimes that happens in a story as well, which is kind of cool when it does.
your journey was up and
Up,
over.
over, over.
Down
Yeah.
the cubicles.
I've never had a cubicle with a locked door. I've been in
Well,
cubicles,
yes.
and I've been in 9.5 foot by 9.5 foot office that had a door.
Well, because I did the payroll and because that was very confidential information, I was one of the few people that had a locked door on her cubicle. But
And they thought that would be enough.
They thought that would be enough, yes.
They'll just keep ringing.
And John in Auditor.
Yes,
Yeah.
the internal
the-
auditor.
Internal
Which, you know, he wasn't a popular guy that much because, you know, if
yeah.
you've ever worked in business, the internal auditor is always pointing out what you're doing wrong.
Right.
And most of us find that annoying, right? So I think he might have been an okay guy deep down inside, but there was just something about, and I knew he was saying those things just to irritate me, those things about women. And it did.
And it did.
And it worked.
And you irritated him right back. Well, our time has flown. We have less than a minute to say goodbye.
Wow. Well, Linda, this has just been delightful. I've learned a bit about how to be creative, I have to say. And I probably learned a little bit more about pantyhose than I never learned. But it's been delightful.
Thank you.
And Kate, it's always wonderful hanging out with you. And you guys out there, thanks for watching.
And we hope you'll come back to watch the show, to come to one of our live performances, or go to storycircle@proctors.org and click on YouTube. Thank you very much.
Have a great rest of your week.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round.